they're going to start coming after your students.
Uh-huh.
It's only a matter of time. Like it's right now you're in kind of JV, right? If you want to talk about it in a sports sense, you're just trying to you retain the people you already have. But as soon as these other schools start ramping up their marketing, aggressively targeting your students for transferring, which is what I'm going to do. Like if I'm a school, I already know you have the financials. If you're committed to this school, you're already in it. You're doing all these things. And I know the infrastructure and the support and the communication, everything we're talking about is lackluster over there. And I also know that people are making emotional decisions. And I know that I checked all those boxes. It's going to be a lot easier for me to take your student than to go convince a new one who hasn't made the decision to go to start. And as soon as that happens, it's going to kind of up the level substantially of the retention of what these colleges are going to need to deal with.
Yeah, and that goes to my earlier point about line of sight. Line of sight is extremely important. And if you can show me line of sight, how can I graduate? And there's this is something that that I'm working on. We already have courses like this, but we'll continue to expand our portfolio. But ACE courses, I don't know if you've ever heard of ACE courses, the American Council of Education. So Straighter Line, all of their courses are ACE approved. So ACE is an entity that says, okay, this course is worth this amount of credit, and they put their stamp on it. If they have their stamp on it, then register to take that. The reason why that's attractive is the cost of it. So if you go look at like a Straighter Line or a Sophia, the cost to get a chemistry class to them is almost nothing. It's like $50. To do that somewhere else is $300-400. And so the key here on that is the articulation agreement. And for universities, it's saying, okay, have we looked at our transfer in policy? I understand all about accreditation and all that, but are we in line with does the student get as much credit as they can as possible? And do we really care if they take it somewhere else or not? And how do we make that line of sight as short as possible for our students so that they can graduate? And I think that is also going to be a big piece. And that's what we're looking at, is expanding our ACE portfolio, not only because it's good for our high school students, but also we want an offering that can say, you have 4 or 5 college classes with us that are 15 credits, and we have 50 institutions that guarantee they're going to accept it. And you paid a fraction of that price, and now to that institution, they got a student that they see as college ready, that we built some confidence for the student, and the cost of enrollment is way cheap for that because we gave it to them. And so I think they need to start looking outside the box at other alternatives, because it's not just enroll or not enroll. People are going to start looking for alternative ways to get their college credit.
Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. That's really good stuff. So I guess I know you said if administrators want to get on the phone with you, you'd be more than happy, to communicate with them just because of the pure passion for the students. Any tips that you could, or nuggets that you could give to some of our listeners in a high school or higher ed?
Yeah, man. Start with the student life cycle. And I mean, really start with the student life cycle. I mean, roll up your sleeves and ask the questions. I always ask, I think adults lose the ability to ask why. And I think kids are the best salesperson. I mean, if you ever have kids and you tell them they can't do anything, what's the first response they give? Why? And then you give them another response and they say, well, why? And so I think we lose that as adults. And so I would love for the administrators to get down to the bottom level and say, I want to see what a student sees the second they hit that application. I want to see what they see next, and just start going through the process and saying, how can I make it better? Because somebody out there is going to make it better, and they're going to take your students. And I think if you can do that or have somebody do that, you're going to just find the little nuggets that are going to make the student experience better. And even from a staff perspective, start doing that, right? When I first started at Graduation Alliance, I did that from the student side, and I did that from the staff side. I had this huge whiteboard, and I literally just started putting problems on there. Well, why do we do that? Why do we do that? And you know what I always heard? Because we always have done that. That won't work anymore. And so we need to look and say, okay, why have we always done that, and is that needed? And how does that fit in the student life cycle? So that's the one piece of advice that I would give if you want to see, change and quick change.
Gotcha. George, anything else?
No, I would just add, I mean, on top of Fernando's point, and make sure that you can execute, especially during the admissions process. Like, it's one thing to have that experience be buttoned up, but when it gets handed over from admissions to the actual teachers, what you sold them needs to come true. And I would also say, think about how to replace the other intangible parts of the experience. Like, we've talked a lot about the transition to online. It's changed. People don't want to pay the same tuition they want to pay, whatever. And it's not just the class time. It's all the ancillaries and the other part of the experience that they're missing. And it has a lot of implications. Part of it is with the retention of the students, but you also have to think about, if I'm going to, the financials of the students. So there's the financial component of, is this value what I'm getting, and do I want to pay the same values I always paid? And we see a lot of lawsuits and stuff going on with bigger colleges trying to charge the same tuition and provide an inferior experience. But it's also about the retention, right? People underestimate the non-core education component of the experience and how that relates to retention, right? I want to stay at this college and not go over there, partly because of the engagement that I have with the curriculum and my teachers and everything else, but also because of the other experience and my friends and other things that's going on. And if I don't have that, or I lose that because I'm transitioning to online, it's like, how do we come up with innovative ways to replace that so that there's more of an emotional connection? Because if it just turns into, where's the cheapest place I can get a credit, that's a whole different ballgame, right, than I think schools are used to operating in.
Yeah, to your point, University of Utah, and that's where my daughter's going to go, is that they just started doing, sending out swag bags and swag boxes, and all the students that are got enrolled, you see them, these kids putting it on social media, and they open this really cool box. It's not like a cheap box. It's like a really cool box, and it's about that experience, and that's what college is. I didn't get that, but for these kids to be able to see it, I'm part of this, help bridge that gap right now. So to your point, I think that's spot on.
Yeah, because we're seeing a huge shift from the more transactional mindset to the more emotional mindset. And you need to be transactional, and from a business standpoint, you need to plan and everything else. But, I would urge listeners not to lose sight of the emotional connection, because I see the same thing, right? Like, I went to a smaller school that didn't have a big university experience. My wife, on the other hand, went to University of Georgia. And I remember the first time I went there, I was like, oh my God, like, this is just a completely different ballgame that I was used to. And I could see where the passion and the kind of, you would never leave that school. But if it's just that I log on to a Zoom and take a class and then leave, like, I have no emotional attachment whatsoever. It could be your Zoom. It could be the other guy's Zoom. It could be that lady's Zoom. It doesn't matter, So how do you surround that Zoom with other things that they can get excited about?
Absolutely. Now, that's a great place to end it. Fernando, I really, really appreciate you joining the podcast. This was a really exciting topic for us, and I'm pretty sure our listeners learned a lot. We sure did. All right.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Podcast. This episode was brought to you in part by Engine Systems and Chief Digital Marketers. For more information on topics discussed, you can visit engine.systems or chiefdigitalmarketers.com. Join us next week and every week after for more innovative and actionable advice.